What's up, YouTube? So today I want to talk about the purpose of the Ten Commandments. I think this is a very misunderstood topic. There is a lot of information. Obviously, the Bible gives us a lot of information about the Ten Commandments. Old Testament, it's considered the Mosaic Law. New Testament, we have Jesus saying things about it. The Ten Commandments is a part of the Mosaic Covenant. Jesus tells us he's giving us a new covenant. What does that mean? Jesus tells us he came to fulfill the law, but not abolish it. Well, what does that mean? So I think it's a good thing for us to think about this and try to understand this properly, because we can misapply this to our lives. And one of the big dangers is that we can confuse obedience to the Ten Commandments with salvation. Like it somehow either gives us salvation or sustains us for salvation or something like that. So I think understanding this clearly is important. So let's go back to Deuteronomy chapter 8, right at the beginning here. So this is after Moses spoke to the children of Israel, gave them the Ten Commandments, and then basically explained to them, their purpose. So he goes on to say here, start at chapter 8, the whole commandment that I command you today, you shall be careful to do, that you may live and multiply. That's a clue. That's a clue right there. Do the commandments that you may live and multiply. So there is definitely benefits. And this is not just this. Yes, he is speaking specifically to the nation of Israel, but I'll show you that this is not just for the nation of Israel. This does apply to us today in a specific way. So then he goes on to say, and go in and possess the land that the Lord swore to give to your fathers. And you shall remember the whole way that the Lord your God has led you these 40 years in the wilderness, that he might humble you. That's another clue. Testing you to know what was in your heart. And that's where we really get into the purpose of the Ten Commandments. So he says, testing you to know what was in your heart, whether you would keep the commandments or not. So, question, when God is testing you, or me, or us, is he trying to find out something that he doesn't know? And I think we know the answer to this. The answer is no. God knows the heart. So when he's testing us, he's not testing us to find out something about us that he doesn't know. He's testing us to show us things about ourselves, and also to show the people around us things about ourselves that we don't know and that they don't know. Okay? God knows the heart. A lot of times we don't know our own heart until we get into, really tough situations. I think we find out a lot about ourselves when we get into those situations. So a lot of times we don't even know our own heart, and definitely people around us don't know our heart. So this is one of the purposes for the Ten Commandments. It's to reveal to us our own heart and to reveal to people around us our heart. So let's go to the New Testament here for a second. Let's go to Mark chapter 2, and in verse 27, this is Jesus talking to the Pharisees, and this is after, they accuse him and his apostles of breaking the Sabbath. And he reminds them, he says, have you not read that David broke the Sabbath? And then he goes on to tell them the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath. So he tells them something that's very key for us to understand, okay? And what he says about the Sabbath here applies to the whole law. right? Excuse me. And it's that the Sabbath or the law was made for man. Man wasn't made for that. Man wasn't made to obey or worship or, idolize, right? The law or the Sabbath. Man was made to be in a relationship with God. Man was made to obey God. And so this is where sometimes we can get confused, by, this. Sometimes we get these teachings that we need to be obedient to the Sabbath, and that there's some truth in that, right? But our obedience, our ultimate obedience is not to the Sabbath or not to the law, right? It's to God. And so we need to have this, we need to understand this very, very clearly. So let's continue here and see if we can get some better insight about this. Let's go to Matthew chapter 22. So this is Jesus basically being questioned again by I think it's both let me see here, the Pharisees and the Sadducees here. Okay. And one of them, a lawyer, ask him that question about which is the greatest commandment. And again, here, we get a clear idea of what the purpose of the commandments are. And it's when Jesus, he basically tells him, hey, love God and love your neighbor. Love God first and love your neighbor second. And he says, on these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets. Okay. So again, they're asking him, about, explain to us the law, which is the greatest law, right? Because some of them thought maybe it was the Sabbath law, right? Some of them thought maybe, it was other things there. You have the law that you don't make idols or whatever, right? But he tells them, no. Love God above all else. But then secondly, love your neighbor. So he bypasses all the laws, or to make it more accurate, he sums them up, right? The first 4 laws is about our relationship with God. And then the last 6, or actually the last 5, I should say more accurately, is about a relationship with man. And that 5th one is like a bridge. Okay. So he basically sums it up into 2 categories: love God, love man. And by doing this, this is what the entire Old Testament, when he says, on these 2 commandments depend all the law and the prophets, he's basically telling them these 2 things is what the entire story of the nation of Israel is about, because that's what their story is. It's about obedience to the law, and it's about the prophets bringing them the revelation of God, right? So that they can go and be the light to the world. But it comes down to love God, love neighbor, because it's about what's in our heart, right? The thing about obedience to the law or obedience to anything else is that we can do that. We can maybe do that perfectly in some situations, but for self-serving reasons. And it doesn't reveal anything about our heart, or it doesn't really give an accurate representation of what's in the heart. Our obedience doesn't give us an accurate representation. God knows what's in our heart. We can fake obedience, or we can actually be obedient, but for the purpose of a self-serving reason, right? And so it goes farther than that. And that's why it comes down to what's in our heart. Do we love God, and do we love our neighbor? And that's what Jesus is explaining here. So we're going to go now to Luke chapter 10, verse 28. This is now another lawyer, right? And he's having a conversation with Jesus, and Jesus asked him, hey, what's written in the law? And he actually repeats what Jesus said to this other lawyer. Lawyers, I think they talk to each other, right? But he repeats exactly what Jesus said to the other lawyer. He repeats that to Jesus. And Jesus said to him, okay, you have answered correctly. Do this and you will live. So he's asking Jesus about, how do I get salvation? How do I get to eternity? All right. Love God, love neighbor. Do this and you shall live. Why? Because it's about your heart. It's about your heart. It's not about obedience to anything. It's about your heart. So here's the difference. So we obey laws all the time, right? We drive on the road. We obey the laws of the road, right? We exist in society, whether we go to work or whatever the case is, we obey those laws in those situations, right? Why? When we're driving on the road, we don't want to get a ticket. We don't want to get fined. The laws of society, we don't want to go to jail, right? So even though maybe I get angry or whatever, I'm not going to act out my anger in a way that I'm going to break laws because now I'm in jail. We obey those laws not because we love anything, but because we're trying to preserve ourselves, right? It's a self-preservation is the motivation for us obeying the laws, in society. Nothing to do with love. It has nothing to do with what's in my heart. It's different when it comes to a young child and a parent, right? A young child obeys the laws of the parents. Why? Not because they're concerned about being fined or going to jail or anything like that. They're not concerned about self-preservation. They obey those laws because they love and respect their parents, ultimately. So yes, there is going to be consequences for their actions. They're going to get punished, disciplined, and this and that. But ultimately, it's not about self-preservation for them. It's about, do I love my parent enough? Do I respect my parent enough to obey their laws? And that's the accurate way of us looking at the 10 Commandments. It's in the same way. We obey the 10 Commandments, not because, we're concerned about if we break them, we're not going to get to heaven, or, if we break them, now my relationship with God is severed, and now I got to do these things to get back in good relation. I got to get down on my knees and repent and this and that. No. Just like with a child and a parent, when a child disobey a parent, the relationship isn't severed. Now I know there are cases, and it usually happens later on, maybe in the teens and after, where unfortunately, those relationships do get severed. But that is not the way it should be, and that is definitely not the way it is with a perfect God, right? That usually has to do with the parent-child relationship. And for me personally, 9 times out of 10, I think it's the parent, that causes that to happen. There's something there along the way that causes that separation to happen when it does happen. But that's a different story. With a perfect God, there is none of that. Once you've put your faith and trust in Jesus Christ, and that's who you've put your trust in to sustain you, that relationship is never severed. Even when we make a mistake and disobey the law or break the law or whatever the case is. And it goes back to what Jesus said, that the law was made for man, not man for the law, right? We were made to be in that relationship with God. We weren't made to be in the relationship with the law or to be in obedience to the law. Our obedience is to God, our ultimate parent. And so if we can understand that clearly, then yes, we should make every effort today to keep the law. Every effort, okay? But not because we think we're going to get fined or we're going to lose our salvation or we're going to end up in jail or hell or something like that. No, because we love the one who gave up his life for us, who lived a perfect life, gave that to us, died on the cross so that our sins can be paid. I think I have a decent example here of how, we can understand this. Like I said, the purpose of this channel here is to hopefully help people to understand what they're reading in the Bible. So the way I think about it is our relationship to the law is like driving down a road. Okay, we're all trying to get to salvation. That's the ultimate destination, right? In the Old Testament, when they're driving down that road, they have to try and keep the law. We know that they're not going to, but every time they break the law, there's a fine. There's an immediate fine for them. There's fines in real time. Okay, every time they break the law, there's fines, and they have to pay those fines. So, they're driving, picture them driving down this road, they're going through the city, they're trying to get to this destination called heaven, right? They break a few laws along the way. What they have to do is they have to pull off, okay? Get to an altar, make a sacrifice so that they can pay for the laws that they've broken. That's why they had yearly sacrifices for the forgiveness of their sins. That was the purpose of the ceremonies, okay, and the sacrifices. Those things were like them turning off, getting off the road, pulling into, the police station and paying their fines. And then they can continue to drive down the road. Oh, wait a minute, 5 minutes down the road, they went one kilometer over the speed limit. There's a cop right there. Fine for 1 kilometer over the speed limit. You got to get off at the next stop, pay your fines again, continue down the road. That was the state that they were in the Old Testament. Constantly trying to pay their fines for their sins, hoping to get to heaven, hoping to get to their destination. That's what was given to them. It was given to them for the purpose of revealing God to the world. More on that in a different video. That's a deep topic. For us, just like we're driving down the same road, same destination, the difference is Jesus is already at the destination. He paid all the fines. Okay, he paid all the fines. He hired an ambulance just in case. So all the fines are paid. Yes, I'm not trying to, because I've put my faith and trust in the one that paid for everything, right? So that's the reason why I'm trying to keep the law. But if I do break it, that fine has been paid for. I don't have to pull off and pay for it myself before I can continue. I can just keep driving. Now I'm going to try to slow down. Whenever I see myself breaking a law, I'm going to try to do what it takes, okay? But if for whatever reason, I look away, I'm going down a steep hill and I don't pay attention to the speed limit, and, my speed increases, I go over the limit, okay? Fines are paid for. It doesn't mean that I'm now, just going to have a free and easy road to my destination. No, because as you guys know, on the road, you could be driving perfectly, okay, obeying every sign, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, someone comes, runs a red light or something, and T-bones you, right? You didn't do anything wrong, but here is a big problem. Jesus has paid for that as well. He's paid for the ambulance to get you through that situation and to get you to continue on down the road. And even if it's an 18-wheeler and unfortunately your life ends in that situation, in that crash, he's paid for the ambulance that's going to still take you to the destination. You still get there because it's paid for. Once you have put your faith and trust in him, your route down that road to your destination is paid for. So yes, we try, and we should wake up every morning telling ourselves, I'm going to keep the 10 commandments. But not because, I need to pay for anything myself, but because I love the one who paid for it for me. And unfortunately, for the people who haven't put their faith in Jesus, they're navigating down that road of life just like we are. But if something should happen and their faith and trust is not in Jesus, well, there's no ambulance there to take them anywhere, and that's the unfortunate reality of it, because he says in his own words, I am the way, the truth, and the life. He's the only way to salvation. So, I hope that offers a little bit of insight, maybe, some better understanding about our relationship to the 10 Commandments The Ten Commandments is definitely valuable, right? It's definitely, useful for us today. We should definitely, wake up every day, trying to keep the Ten Commandments as best we can, because by doing so, just like it says in Deuteronomy, okay, it gives us, a better life, a better spiritual life, a life more connected to God, okay? Obedience to the Ten Commandments does give us a better relationship with God, because the Ten Commandments was made for us, right? Just like the rules of the road, the laws of the road, it's meant to keep us safe. When we drive down the road, right, and we see the speed limit, it's meant to keep us safe and other people safe as well, right? We have cars that go easily 200 kilometers an hour, right? The speed limit on the highway is usually like around 100 kilometers an hour. Why? Because it's meant for our safety. The laws were given to us for our own safety, for our own benefit. And more importantly, it shows who, are trying to be good drivers and who are trying to be reckless, right? For anyone who says they put their faith and trust in Jesus, and then they just go out there and they're, running every red light, flying down the road. Well, we know the truth, right? The truth is they're saying something, but they don't really love the one who's paid all the fines for them, right? They see that person as somebody to take advantage of or something. That's what's in the heart. So that's the purpose of the law. It reveals all of these things to us. And when we pay attention to it, we can see first and foremost what's in our heart. And then, for the ones that are close to us, our family members and so on and so forth, we can see a little bit about them and understand a little bit about them, depending on how they relate to the law of God. So hopefully this offers a little bit of understanding and clarification here about the Ten Commandments. See you guys on the next one.